This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 497, Drupal Forge. On today's show, we're talking about Drupal Forge, how it works, and why it's changing Drupal with our guest, Darren Oh. We'll also cover ECA VBO as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our guest today is Darren. He has been a member of the Drupal community since 2005. His work with the community led to his current role as a senior software engineer at Cognizant. And since 2024, he's been the project lead for Drupal Forge, a platform for instant Drupal demos. Darren, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Nick Laughlin, founder at Enlightened Development, and today my co-hosts are joining us for her second week as guest host, Kathy Beck, senior UX engineer at Oomph. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
And also joining us as usual, John Picozzi, solution architect at EPAM.
Howdy.
And now to talk about our module of the week, let's turn it over to Martin Anderson-Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and recipes of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, Nick. Have you ever wanted a powerful and flexible way to create views bulk operations without writing code? There's a module for that. It's called ECA VBO, and it was created in May of 2022 by MXH, a prolific maintainer in his own right, and an active member of the group that has made the ECA ecosystem so far-reaching. It has 1.1.1 and 2.1.1 versions available, the latter of which supports Drupal 10.3 and 11. It is actively maintained and has security coverage. And as for documentation, it sort of has it. There's a pretty extensive README with good step-by-step instructions, and the project page has links to both an example model and a tutorial video. It has 7 open issues, one of which is a bug against the current branch, which is pretty good considering it's in use by 320 sites according to Drupal.org. Now, with the module installed, your site will have a number of events within ECA specifically for defining models that can perform bulk actions on the selected items in a view. In my own experience, the most useful event is VBO execute views bulk operation one by one. From there, you can define the logic of what needs to happen to the selected items. I've used it for fairly simple operations like changing content to a specific moderation state, but you could define complex logic that is conditional on field values, site configuration, or even global factors like time of day. With one or more models defined, you can now add a field to your view for ECA bulk operations, and then select which eligible models you want available in that specific view. It's worth adding that the ECA model can also include logic to define who should have access to perform a particular operation, which could be as simple as checking the role of the current user, but can be as complex as you need. I came across ECA VBO during some recent work on the Drupal event platform, which is already available to try out on Drupal Forge, but there should be a more formal announcement on that front soon. So let's talk about ECA VBO.
I have some questions. So I imagine that when you create a new model using this, it adds the operation as an option on the dropdown, right? In whatever view you add it to.
So there's within views, there's a special field that you add that's like
Yep.
ECA VBO, and it adds it to that. It shows up as an option there.
Okay. And it merges it in with the normal VBO options that are available from the VBO module, or is it a separate dropdown?
I think it's a separate selection of actions. So I'm not sure you can mix and match them, unfortunately.
That's too bad, but not a huge deal. I feel like VBO used to be like I did use it on every site, but I used it on a lot of sites. And I feel like this module might be a way to kind of bring that back. I think the piece that I have to get over, and this is definitely um, something I think I've seen in the community beyond myself, but I've definitely moved away from the let me use a module first and this kind of thing I've just written code for. And so it feels like a heavy lift to add ECA for one specific thing that you need. But if you start using ECA as the way to manage this type of logic, and you start using it for all those little things that you write custom code for, I think it can start replacing that. If it can, Drupal can get back to the basics.
Oh, I was just going to say the other thing to think about too is ECA potentially also makes migrating between major versions of Drupal easier because if you can use it to replace some of those smaller, lesser maintained modules, then that can mean fewer things that you need to sort of wait to have those updated before you can move up to like Drupal 12 next year.
Yeah.
Good point.
I also would think like if you are building something where you have a lot of like maybe integrations or like you need to move, a node from one state to another. And then based on that change, you need to go out and do something and then report back and all this other stuff. Like I imagine this could be super useful in that regard where it's like, okay, select these three nodes. Like I almost imagine like I'm going to use this example, even though there are already like plenty of modules that do this, but like if you were translating content, right? And like for some whatever reason Drupal you were using some maybe proprietary translation service or something. Like I imagine this could help you with like, hey, send these three nodes to the translation service. Once you hear back from the translation service, update the status of the like I imagine that could be like a lower barrier to entry to get your, a better integration, a better user experience than like custom coding something that you'd have to then maintain and update. And those business rules are pretty easily updated, I would say, through ECA. So I definitely see this as being super useful for like admins or folks that are kind of using Drupal in more of like a I don't know management capacity.
And I think with the recipes coming around, all the like manual site building pieces of bulk operations is going to get easier for folks. So
Yeah. I definitely agree that like maybe even the building of ECA models will be easier, right? Because you could install a recipe that kind of had that config already there for you. So like, if there was something that was more of a common task, you could recipeify it. I don't know if that's actually a term, but it should be. And then like people could just kind of use that to enable that feature or functionality. So definitely see definitely see a lot of interesting use cases for this.
Well, and I know there's also a lot of talk right now between sort of the ECA community within Drupal as well as the AI community, and the pairing of those two, I think, is also incredibly powerful in a variety of ways, including potentially the ability to have AI maybe do the first pass on your model for you after you sort of use normal language to describe the business logic of what you're trying to achieve.
That would be absolutely a game changer because my biggest problem with ECA right now is the fact that when I go in there to try to create a model, I'm like basically hunting and pecking for like what that model needs to look like and do. I'm like, here's the idea. Okay, now how do I translate that into like ECA parlance? So yes, that piece of it would be awesome. And I mean like VBO is super useful. It's like one of those modules. Every time I use it, I'm kind of like, why is this not in core again? Like, why? Like, what?
when you need
Well,
to use it, like you need to use it because
yeah. I mean, I guess that's
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
If you're not in views all the time and doing things with multiple nodes, then maybe it's not as useful. But I mean, I think even like on the content view, right? There are a lot of things VBO
Mhm.
adds there that are helpful. So, um, anyway,
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that VBO does it. It probably isn't super. It probably doesn't change a super lot anymore, but it does need to respond to contrib a lot faster than core can, right? If there's a new module or data type or action, something like that, VBO will need to update. And if it was part of core, that would take a lot longer than I think you'd want for something like this. So I think this kind of utility, like I can see both sides, but I think it makes sense in contrib.
yeah. All right, I like it.
Well, Well, thank you, Martin, for another great module of the week. If folks wanted to connect with you to suggest the module of the week or just chat, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Always to chat. I was happy to chat about interesting modules in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack, or folks can reach out to me directly as Manclue on all of the Drupal and social platforms.
Thanks, Martin. See you next week.
See you then.
On May 2nd, we are recording episode 500, which is just
That's
3 away.
3 episodes away. 3 episodes.
I'm getting very excited. I'm also I think we currently have 20 guests signed up. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Feel free to join us. We want everybody to join that can. If it wasn't clear from that, you are the special guest. So if you want to sign up or you want to learn more, you can visit talkingdrupal.com/show500. That's SHOW and the number 500 to learn more. Everybody's welcome. All right, moving on to our primary topic. Darren, can you give us the elevator pitch for Drupal Forge? Me personally, I hadn't heard about it until came out as a possible contender for Drupal CMS demo. So can you tell us a little bit about Drupal Forge? What is it?
Yeah, Drupal Forge, short description, it's a marketplace for ready-made Drupal sites, and it's designed to sustain open contribution and collaboration. So last DrupalCon in 2024, no, actually 2022, I was hearing many people complaining about takers getting more out of Drupal than makers. Um, um, Jay Rockowitz was talking about how he couldn't keep up with his work on web forms, and I was thinking we've got to get a better business model for this. So my idea was that was inspired by DrupalPod and SimplyTest.me, that we could just have links that people could use to spin up sites and on different project pages, and then if they liked the site, they could buy it, and part of that revenue would go back to the project to support the maintainer. And I didn't have time to work on a distribution to make that people would want to buy. So when I heard about Drupal CMS, I said, okay, now we can do it.
Did you cover everything? Because there's a lot more information.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. So yeah, I can tell you what we've built for the user experience so far. We've built instant demos so that users can use to evaluate a ready-made Drupal site, or they can use it for training. We've already had every Drupal training business that I know of has been using it. And users can also save these sites and either buy hosting from Drupal Forge or deploy it to their own hosting.
So it sounds like Drupal Forge is kind of like sitting in that space of last year's DrupalCon, where Dries had that kind of like launch button on a slide and everybody was like, what's it gonna do?
Yeah.
Right. Like
Mhm.
it sounds like Drupal Forge kind of sits in that space and allows you to kind of spin up a Drupal CMS site and then maybe host it
Yeah.
with Drupal Forge, or take it somewhere else and host it yourself. Is that
Right. And
fair
it's
to
not
say?
just and it's not just Drupal CMS. It's any kind of site that you want to put up on Drupal Forge.
Okay.
So there was all this anxiety that came from that Jesus slide, and people saying, what company is going to be controlling that launch experience? And I was saying, why don't we make it a community project? And instead of fighting over what company is going to control it, why don't we build it as a community? And I wasn't able to get the Drupal CMS, or I mean the Starshot leadership to buy into that, or the Drupal association. So we just created a separate project.
I see.
Mm.
So then what if it's open source, right? Like obviously there are a lot of there's a lot of nuts and bolts and a lot of like glue that kind of needs to come together to bring this together as a cohesive offering, right? So like
Yeah.
I'm wondering like what's Drupal Forge built on? Like how does it kind of work basically?
Well, it's assembled together with it's Drupal 10 and web forms that do everything, that all the the work of actually making things happen. These web forms submit to um, data to a dev panel tool, backend tool. So I don't know if you've used dev panel before, but I think Drupal Forge has given a lot of exposure. So we have dev panels provided a light version of their software to handle the actual deployment of sites. Panel is a separate company. Dev panel itself is not open source, but we haven't needed to worry about to building that part of the tool ourselves, because they provided us a free license.
So Dev Panel, you can find out more listeners about Dev Panel in episode 313, where we talked to Salim about Dev Panel. Dev Panel is basically providing kind of that hosting layer, right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, dev panel provides the tools you need to manage hosting, to deploy code. Dev panel doesn't provide hosting. We're using DigitalOcean droplets for the hosting, and dev panel is the layer in between Drupal Forge and DigitalOcean that handles getting things where they need to go.
Got it. Okay. So it's kind of like that orchestration layer to make sure that like you have that seamless experience where it's like, hey, you're installing this and now here it is, right?
Right.
Got it. Okay. Um Awesome. All right, that seems to answer it pretty handily. The web form piece of it, that's just like plain old Drupal web forms. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing special going on there.
Nope.
Oh, interesting. That's cool. Hmm.
I was wondering what the pricing model looks like. I was taking a peek online, and there's a couple options here.
Yeah. We got two pricing models. One is for agencies that want to provide use their bring their own hosting, and so you can either bring your own hosting, or we can um, facilitate to you buying it for, we got to different hosting levels: $200, $500, $1,000 a month, and then you can run unlimited sites on that hosting. The other model is for site by site hosting, which goes $20 a month, and I don't remember what the other levels. It goes from 20 to 200, I think, a month, depending on the level of hosting that you choose. And those prices are designed to provide some margin for resellers to make a profit, as well as cover the cost of the hosting.
Is this a lot of pricing models lately have gone to a user-based pricing model. This looks like it's per month. Is it unlimited team members?
Yes.
Awesome.
So, question around pricing, right? So, is Drupal Forge like so as a user, if I come to Drupal Forge and I want to spin up a Drupal CMS site, is it free to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so then when does pricing kick in? When I need to like actually host it somewhere?
Pricing kicks in when you want to make it a live site.
Ah, okay. So it's like that aspect of like, okay, if you want to add a domain to this, then
Yeah.
you have to pay to put it somewhere.
Right. And we do have a limit to how long you can extend your trial. I mean, by default, if you don't save your site, it expires in an hour. If you decide to save it, you can extend it up to a month. but after that, we're going to get rid of it unless you've bought it.
Oh,
Got it.
that's
Okay.
really generous, though. That's pretty,
Yeah.
that's pretty nice. Now, I just diving into this a little bit because Drupal, you know, just as somebody who hosts a lot of, works with a lot of different Drupal sites, 1995 is not bad. For Drupal specific hosting, it's definitely on the more affordable end. Um, do you have opportunities to change small pieces about it though? So, for example, um, I have a client site that gets almost no traffic, right? It's like an internal thing. A couple people use it a couple times a week. It's almost like an archive, but it has 50 gigabytes of files. And obviously, I could set up S3. I don't want to do that though. But do you have the opportunity to be like, hey, we'll use the $20 a month plan, but we also want to add, whatever it is we need, an additional 50 gigabytes or something. Do you have that flexibility, or is it really just whatever's on the plan is available?
Well, it's a community project. We can build whatever we wanted.
Okay.
We have volunteers to work on. So
Okay.
not yet.
Not yet.
But if we get that on our roadmap and someone wants to work on it, that'd be a great addition.
I actually do have a question, maybe not so much related about pricing specifically, but more so about I'm looking at the pricing page, which is causing me to have this question. One of the little option check marks here says it works with DDEV. I'm wondering, is there like a Drupal Forge like starter package in DDEV, or is it more just that like you can integrate with DDEV? Like how does that piece of it work?
Oh, let me see which one is it that says it works with DDAV.
It's actually, I think all of them. Yes, it goes straight across the board from
Oh, okay.
personal business package.
Okay. I think that's talking about local development, then or not DDEV in the cloud. We don't have DDEV in the cloud yet because it requires a huge amount of memory and processing power to run Docker in Docker. And we have a solution which would involve running using DDEV in a container and connecting to a remote Docker server instead of running Docker in the same container. But we
Oh,
haven't
that's clever.
had time to work on yet.
Yeah, that's
I see.
clever. Like having kind of a central container for running DDEV commands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
wondering because I know a lot of hosting vendors have like specific DDEV packages where like you can push and pull to your environments from the DDEV container locally on your machine. I wasn't sure if that's kind of what you were getting at there.
Yeah. I want to. We do have backups that are compatible with DDEV that are stored in Amazon file storage. Um, we don't yet have an API for DDEV to push and pull with.
Got it.
okay. All right. So Drupal Forge, you've mentioned a couple times already, is kind of a way to demo Drupal with one click. Maybe a couple because you have to enter a captcha. So maybe 2 clicks. But we've only really talked about Drupal CMS. Is that the only thing that you can install on Drupal Forge, or are there other uh, distributions or um, vanilla Drupal sites that you can install and pass?
You can install. You can do anything on Drupal Forge. We've got just today we've launched a service that lets you take a site that's running in Dev Panel and turn that into a template on Drupal Forge. So you can turn any site into a Drupal Forge template. We've had a lot of contributors. We have Bernardo who contributed our mid camp and our Drupal camp, our Florida Drupal camp demo sites. We've got Izzy who contributed our backdrop um, demo,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah. a bunch of other demos, and you can also sign up on Drupal Forge and get a space where you can decide what demos are featured in your space.
Yeah, and just to quickly read through the list, like it's, vanilla Drupal for the currently supported versions, Drupal CMS, you can technically do Drupal 7, but please don't. Um, Backdrop, Civi CRM, Umami, Digital Agency. Backdrop Digital Agency. What is the governor?
That is
Uh,
a government website template.
okay. And then there's a couple of campsites and starter guides and other gov. There's Contenta and Drupal for Gov as well. So it looks like there's been quite a bit of contributions on that front. That's
Mhm.
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So one thing I noticed when looking at the Drupal Forge site is that Drupal Forge uses the terminology of templates.
Mhm.
Um, I'm wondering if Drupal Forge was kind of an influencer of site templates from the latest Dries note in Atlanta, or was it the other way around?
No, it definitely wasn't the other way. And we did have meetings with the Drupal Association and explaining our vision and seeking collaboration. So I hope we had some influence there.
There you go. All right, I like it.
Why offer templates for Drupal camps? Like for Florida Drupal camp and mid camp.
Yeah, I think that we depend a lot on talking or traditionally to explain people what Drupal can do, and people don't have enough imagination to take those conversations and really get excited about what it can be. So we need something that's fully formed to fire their imaginations. So you start with the beautiful Florida Drupal camp website and you say, that's what I want, and you make it your own.
I see. So like it's a starting point for like other event websites or the intention there is to take it and transform it from the Florida Drupal camp website to the, Saskatchewan Drupal camp website.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they're just looking for pretty things. So start with something pretty and make it what you want it to be.
And how could someone donate their site template to Drupal Forge?
Okay, so what you do is you sign up for an account on drupalforge.org, and then that gives you access to workspace on Dev Panel, and that in that workspace you can create any kind of custom site that you want. And then once you have it's ready to be distributed, we have a form that you put in all the information about that template, and it gets spun up in a GitHub repository and Docker image, and those are together are what make a Drupal Forge template.
All right.
You said Drupal Forge is a community project, so I assume Drupal Forge is open source.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So here's my question, because this isn't a typical open source project, meaning that there's infrastructure involved. So like for most open source projects, you can pull down the code, turn it on, test it, run it. But it sounds like part of Drupal Forge is the integration with DevPanel and DigitalOcean, I expect.
Yeah.
How do
And to
you
be clear, those parts are not open source.
Exactly.
So how do you test, like if I'm looking to contribute something like the piece that I talked about earlier where I want to be able to customize the hosting plans, how would I go about testing that and contributing that back?
It's on our roadmap to make it a project that you can download and spin up locally your own copy. Right now, I have to. I can run it locally if I pull down the database and the files archives. Um, so yeah, making it to something that anybody can spin up their own copy of is requires is going to require a little more work, because right now it's just you just get a copy of DrupalForge.org.
Okay. And so who, to be clear, I don't know that I'm volunteering at the moment for this. I have a lot on my plate. But
Sounds like
if that was
volunteering to me, but okay, keep going.
if that was something that I or a listener wanted to contribute with, is that something they could work with on you? Or is that more like, hey, we'd have to contribute something else and you is that something that you would have to focus on?
Oh, I would be happy to focus on. I think I need to provide some documentation to get you started, because I haven't kept that updated. But yeah, if you want to take the time to do it without help, you could. But I'd be happy to help.
Okay. Very cool. Like I said, and just to be clear, I wasn't volunteering because I also don't want you to go off and do all that extra work. In fact, yeah, I would certainly send you a message separately if I'm planning on doing that.
I need to do it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, it needs to happen. But I and the reason why I'm really interested in this, like I said, is I do have several clients where they just have a small site and they still balk at like, hey, platform SH is you're gonna look at 75 to $100 a month. If you're on Linode or DigitalOcean, you can get that down, but then you're on the hook for the maintenance of the infrastructure, right? If you're
Hmm.
on Acquia, it's gonna be a few $100 a month. So having an option that is um on the lower end there, but still providing some kind of value for something that's really low traffic and is kind of just an intro archive. I think that's something that the Drupal community has been missing
Yeah.
for a long time.
And we want this. I can imagine an agency running their own version of Drupal Forge, but we want this to be a good solution for freelancers as well. So we're working on the ability for people to set their own prices in Drupal Forge and decide what gets what services get included when people buy on their websites. So we don't really want people buying their websites from us. We want to be partnering with resellers who will provide the customer support and whatever other services go along with the website.
So
Oh, that's an interesting business model. Yeah,
I
that's interesting.
so now I have like six other questions related on what you just said, right? So like one question for me is like you talk about resellers, right? And like the ability for agencies to kind of like use Drupal Forge as like a resale opportunity. Where where is the split between it makes sense to use Drupal Forge and it makes sense to use Dev Panel? I imagine like if I'm like thinking about this in my brain, right? Like I imagine the split is I'm going to use Drupal Forge if I want specific site templates available to my customers that then I can use spin up using Dev Panel and host, either on DigitalOcean or wherever I want, right?
Yeah.
Um, so like there's the use case for Drupal Forge. I imagine like if I'm an agency and I just want site management and I don't need the template kind of layer there, then Dev Panel on its own would do the trick. Is that
It
a
would.
fair assessment?
Yeah. So Drupal Forge, if you want to sell ready-made Drupal sites, use Drupal Forge.
Got it. Okay. So now my next question, before I actually ask my real question, is how do you think Drupal Forge, and this is kind of like a look into the future, right? How do you think Drupal Forge is going to change once the idea of site templates is more widely used within Drupal and Drupal CMS?
Well, we'll use whatever is the recommended way of building a Drupal site. It won't be a problem. Right now, we're using Composer and recipes,
Mhm.
so it's not going to be Yeah, whatever is if a better way is developed, that's going to be available on Drupal Forge also.
Got
So
it. Okay.
I
So go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
sorry, John. I need to break in then because you mentioned something. So one of the big problems with this whole automated hosting bit is the DNS and domain registration.
Mhm.
And is that solved by dev panel and Drupal Forge like in combination? So like if I did what you said, like if you want to cater to resellers and I decide I want to become a reseller, is that problem solved for me already?
We don't have a way to purchase domains, but if you do purchase a domain, you can put that live domain into your dev panel
Okay.
workspace.
Okay, so there's still some work because the piece that made me question this is you mentioned like if you want to resell pre-existing templates to customers, and that's something that I've thought about for a long time. But the piece that's really difficult, honestly, is that domain piece, right? Um, so if there's the opportunity to kind of work on that, if you see a future for that, that might be a really interesting place too, because you
Yeah,
can
I can imagine
provide,
it being another web form on
yeah,
Drupal Forge.
yeah, because and that's the piece that I'm wondering about because you can grab like, for example, if you're selling pre-built restaurant sites and you just find a way to allow people to choose it, throw up their menu, choose a domain, put it up, and now they have now they have a website, then you have to cater that piece to the less technical user as well.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, web form sounds great. Just need to integrate it with some service that can handle that as an API.
Yeah, and another um, cool thing you could do, which might not require its own domain, is having little AI utilities. So
What do you
you
mean?
could have those as templates for an AI utility that does some task for you, and somebody could just spin that up, buy it, and might not care whether it's publicly accessible or not.
So let's jump into a little bit of the roadmap for Drupal Forge, right? So
Mhm.
open source project. Clearly, you guys are actively working on it. I'm wondering, like, what's coming in the future for Drupal Forge.
Well, what's coming really soon is an AI demo. So we've already got figured out how to put limited AI keys into every environment as an environment variable. And so the AI demo is something I've been was working on this morning. Oh, and if you want to see Experience Builder, the Experience Builder demo is not on the Drupal Forge front page, but it's on MySpace. So go to Drupal Forge slash u slash Darren Oh, and you can see it there. Um,
So talk more about the AI key, like limited use AI keys. How is that working out? And like what are you guys doing there?
we're running a light LLM server, and that to proxies um, requests from our Drupal Forge sites to OpenAI and the other AI providers, and it generates keys for us that have a limited spend on them. So right now we're putting 25 cents on each key. So you can get into the AI demo and you can do 25 cents worth of experimenting with it.
Which
And
for somebody that's like, well, 25 cents does not seem like a lot of money. A lot of it is quite a bit in AI spend, as like you could literally build a whole Drupal site and like, ping the AI about 100 times for like, I don't know, 3 cents or
yeah,
something like that, right?
yeah, you'll use it up pretty fast if you try to generate images, but otherwise you're good.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I noticed that. So you brought us to your Drupal Forge page, and there's the experience builder there, but it's not on the homepage. Does every user get their own user template?
Yeah. Yeah. So these are the templates that I manage. Experience Builder is a very expensive demo to run, so we're not really putting it on the homepage right now. It costs twice as much as the other demos.
Special
And
That
access
scares
for
me.
talking
That scares
Drupal.
me just yeah, sorry, Kathy. That scares me just a little bit as a developer. If I expect that in my future, then having to increase hosting plans just to support Experience Builder sounds like.
yeah, it could be. And then the Drupal Starshot is a template I created that lets you contribute to Drupal CMS from within the your Drupal Forge site. So other things that are on our roadmap is the ability to embed our launch widget in other pages. So you can get it into I'm hoping we can get it in Drupal project pages so that project maintainers can get some revenue for their projects that way. We can have it in maybe even in a banner ads to get Drupal more exposure. And I'm working on we've got an alternative to Drupal Pod running now. So you can create Drupal Forge links the way you could create Drupal Pod links, and that's been and we've also got our browser extensions ready for that. So when Gitpod stops providing hosting for Drupal Pod, you'll have a way to contribute in the cloud using Drupal Forge. Another thing that's on our roadmap is checkout for resellers. I was saying that resellers will be able to set their own prices when we do the checkout. The money that their share of the money will be split between the reseller and the Drupal Association and whatever project maintainers they have designated as their as being that they want to contribute to.
Yeah, can you dive into that split a little bit? Has there been any, because we had a brief discussion after the show for our patrons about site templates and the fact that it may be paid, and there's some discussion about possibly splitting that with contributors.
Mhm.
I mean, you kind of have a similar model here. What kind of discussions have you had around this, and have they been informed by anything related to site templates?
Well, there are what we call site templates. Yeah. So the pricing plans that we have are set to where for 40% of the that price to cover the hosting cost to Drupal Forge, and the remaining 60% or higher if the reseller sets a higher price to be available to split between the reseller and the Drupal Association and other contributors. The way we're doing that is with Stripe checkout. So um, it'll go through our Stripe account, but our Stripe account can designate additional Stripe accounts that will to split the payment with, and we're working on it and we haven't got it done. I talked to Ryan from Centauro at DrupalCon about it. We have it's a work in progress.
So you mentioned sharing funds with the DA. Are you currently sharing funds with the DA?
We currently haven't had funds to share yet.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, we're primarily being supported by sponsorship from DevPanel, but we have just before DrupalCon we created an open collective, so we've had a few individual sponsors joined there, and we had Drupal Easy that sponsored the our hosting for Contribution Day at DrupalCon. So we're ramping up the sponsorship. We're hoping to have funds to cover more than just our hosting very soon.
How can people get involved more so than just donating to the collective, which obviously is needed?
Well, we have the projects on our roadmap. One that I didn't mention yet is we want to as a catalog for vendors, which will list each of the things that the vendors provide, so you can be exactly matched up with the vendors you need for your site. That is something that we could use contributors to help make happen. You could help us with developing the reseller ecosystem. Right now, you have to have your customers pay you directly, and then you'd buy the hosting from Drupal Forge yourself. Like I said, we want customers to be able to use Drupal Forge to check out, and then the funds be split up as you designated. We need marketing help. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
I was gonna say, in that contribution would be done on the Drupal projects, Drupal Forge.
Yes, yes, right. You can help us apply for grants, which is not something I know how to do, but I need to work on, because this is used as an educational tool and a contribution tool. So we are looking at what organizations would fund that.
And is that looking for people to write grants or look for grants, or both?
Both. Yeah. Not something I've got any experience with. We can help we could always use more site templates. We could help maintaining and improving our existing site templates. If you've got hosting to run any of these demos, and you can either offer to donate hosting for general hosting, or you can offer to donate hosting for a single demo that means a lot to you.
Just out of curiosity, on the
go ahead.
hosting front, I'm wondering, like, I'm assuming it's like kind of like bring your own hosting with with an exception, right? So like I'm assuming Dev Panel is working on, DigitalOcean, it's working on AWS, it would work on like bare metal hosting that you kind of are doing yourself,
Right.
but it's probably not working on something like Pantheon or Acquia. Is that fair to say?
It works on anything you can get an SSH connection to right now.
Okay.
But we would need to work with Pantheon and Acquia to get it to work on their hosting.
Okay. So if somebody's listening from one of those organizations and this is interesting to them, they should reach out.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. We have a weekly Zoom meeting that we announce in our Slack channel. So get on our Slack channel if you want to be involved. And
that's Drupal Forge.
Drupal Forge, yes. And we could use some advocacy, because I know there's we wanted to be part of the Starshot initiative. We wanted to be under the umbrella of the Drupal Association, but we ended up having to organize as a separate nonprofit. And that was because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask, can you share a little bit more about that in particular? Because I know that there were a couple of shifts. I know originally there was exploration of using WebAssembly. Then I heard that Drupal Forge was in contention, and ultimately it ended up at Acquia.
Yeah.
What did that look like? And do you think there's still a possibility for Drupal Forge kind of becoming kind of a nonprofit system for managing those launches? What was going on in those negotiations?
There is a possibility if we have enough people advocating for an open contribution platform to provide that trial experience. Problem was our we had Starshot leadership who was afraid to talk about a hosted um, trial experience, and they didn't want to discuss that, so that's why we had to start this without them. And then we have to be featured on Drupal.org. You have to be one of the big donors and one of the big three. Acquia, Pantheon, or Platform.sh. So we need support from those big donors. We need those donors to be working with us, and so that the Drupal Association doesn't feel like they would be threatening their relationships with those donors if they worked with us.
Yeah. Uh, that's an interesting perspective. And on its face, you would think that, they're competitors to the service you're providing. But since you're looking to support resellers, I could see a pipeline that, I could see a situation where the three of them support Drupal Forge, and Drupal Forge serves as a pipeline to all three of them.
That's
Um,
what I would like. Yeah.
yeah, and then there'd be, the community would get the open source version on Drupal.org for testing, but the eventual hosting is with one of them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John. What do you got? I see something
Yeah, he has this
percolating.
thinking face.
Well, I'm just so I mean, I guess the Drupal Forge kind of like site template, library functionality piece of it makes sense to me, right? In the way that you described, Nick. But I mean, ultimately, I would imagine, and I do not speak for anybody in the Drupal community, but I imagine the big problem here is that, Drupal Forge is tightly coupled with Dev Panel, right? So like having Dev Panel kind of in the middle of a Pantheon or Acquia setup doesn't make a ton of sense because they have their own management utilities and tools, at least from where I'm sitting right now. Um, so like I imagine that's probably a little bit of the hang up there where it's like, okay, if Drupal Forge were kind of like backend agnostic or had, you know, connector to Dev Panel, connector to Pantheon, connector to Acquia, then I could see that being probably a little bit more widely accepted.
We've got the ability to deploy from dev panel to any host that offers Docker and SSH connections right now. And I don't think that dev panel would be is I think this would be, like you say, a pipeline. I don't think there would be a permanent relationship that I think dev panel would facilitate the deployment of the site to these other hosting providers. But
I see.
yeah,
More of a
but
CI/CD process step
yeah,
than like an actual site management step.
right. I think the users would use their account on those sites.
Got it.
Now, we have had one of those an engineer from one of those companies talk to us about could they use Drupal Forge as a way for their users to test branches and have that um, cloud editing experience, because their leadership was asking them to develop uh, an online editing experience, and they're interested in using Drupal Forge instead of developing it from scratch.
Mhm.
Mm. That's nice.
Yeah,
Having that option of that multi-dev.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I've used Acquia, and I'm not sure how multi-dev is set up there. I know that I know Pantheon has multi-dev, but I mean, I think Platform has kind of the most seamless experience for setting up multi-dev, like quote unquote multi-dev environments. I mean, you just create a pull request and you get. I think Pantheon has gotten here. It's just I haven't set it up in a while, but
I, yeah, I'd just like to add a
Oh
side
yeah,
note
Pantheon's got
here that
multi-dev.
yeah, I would just like to add a side note here that Nick is a huge platform fanboy. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a
they've
fan.
got multi-dev, but if you want to be able to work on it in a live site, a live site with an editing backend, that's where Drupal
Uh,
Forge is a little different.
okay. Can you dive into that a little bit more? Like, what does that
Yeah. So every one of our containers comes with a online version of VS Code. So
Oh,
you log into VS Code, you do live editing of your branch, and you see those changes directly in that branch's live site, or and then you can commit those changes and then from directly from within VS Code.
that
Oh,
is
yeah, it's
nice
not
way to
just like
put. Yeah,
logging into the Drupal admin. It's editing the code
yeah.
in the okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I have to say that that does sound like that sounds exciting for certain use cases. Like when you have, especially when you have something like, I would never want that on production, right? But it does sound nice to have on a test environment when you sometimes occasionally have like things where your local doesn't exactly match upstream and you can't reproduce it locally, like the ability to tweak or debug or like even, you know, print debugging variables to the screen, but not have to like push from your local to clean it up. Just have a VS Code right there. And I imagine that deployments are a little bit faster. Cause, I mean, webhooks are fast, but maybe that much faster. But yeah, I could see some cases where that would be a real differentiator. I mean, hmm, that's fascinating. So before we move to close the show, is there is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners about Drupal Forge that is either coming up or an existing feature that you're just really proud of that people should know about?
No, I've mentioned what's coming up, and I'm pretty proud of what we've already been able to accomplish. So, yeah, I just want to add support dev panel. That they're our main sponsor. They got into this hoping to be credited as Starshot contributors, and that didn't happen. So let's let them know the community's behind them because of their support for Drupal Forge.
And
Oh,
Drupal
heck yeah.
Forge is fully a nonprofit, right?
Yes. Yeah, we got it's we the official nonprofit is the Ops Association, and Drupal Forge is one of the projects of the Ops Association.
What else is associated with the Ops Associate?
Nothing yet, but the idea was maybe there would be other open source uh, communities that could benefit from a similar type of marketplace in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I could see, I mean, DDEV already kind of has its own foundation and is supported by platform, I think, but I could see in another world where, if the Ops Association had existed first, it may have like that's the kind of tool it sounds like would be a good fit. Yeah, for something like this. Yeah, that's really interesting. All right, Darren, thank you for joining us to talk to us about Drupal Forge. It's been fascinating. Like I always love these DevOps and like I said, these types of open source projects where you're not just pushing code for a module or for a site and you're kind of building a system of systems because it requires kind of another layer of abstraction and testing and it's always fascinating to me. So thank you for joining us to chat about Drupal Forge.
You're welcome.
Do you have questions or feedback? Reach out to Talking Drupal on the socials with the handle Talking Drupal or by email with show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and other listeners on Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel.
And you can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/TD promo.
Get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest hosts, show news, upcoming shows, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing Become a Patron. All right, Darren, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, had any questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm Darren Oh on Drupal.org, on Slack. Those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Great. And Kathy, how about you?
Kbeck 303 on social media or kbeck@oomphinc.com.
And John, how about you?
You can find out about me at Picozzi.com. You can follow me on social media and Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And you can find out more about EPAM at EPAM.com.
And you can find me pretty much everywhere at NixFan, NICXVAN.
And if you enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right.